Tragedy, then, is an imitation of an action. Aristotle, The Poetics.
With this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1.
In spite of what you hear sometimes about how actors prepare, you see movie star interviews and stuff where they go, well, I spent years, pretending to be a dog before I played a dog, or they build a boat or something like that. Theater actors have a very practical set of tools and ways to prepare for playing any role, including a role that is as big and scary and daunting as Hamlet. It's not magic. It's not guesswork. It really is based on an actor analyzing what the character wants and how they're trying to get it. And that process is the simplest formula of an actor's preparation can be sort of understood through the basic sort of binary system of analysis and interpretation.
What do you read, my lord?
Words, words, words. Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2.
Shakespeare gives us this amazing blueprint with clues in the text that helps actors make their choices. For example, there are a lot of stage direction clues in Shakespeare's work. One of the most obvious ones is in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 2, Scene 2. It's a scene between Hermia and Lysander. They've just escaped the woods. They're completely exhausted and they're ready to go to bed for the night. And Hermia, Lysander wants to cozy up to Hermia, and it's really cute. But she says, lie further off, Lysander, my dear. Do not lie so near. So Lysander is forced to lie physically away from Hermia, and what is a moment for her in expressing her modesty ends up being a perfect stage direction. So that later, a scene later when Helena comes in and wakes Lysander from the spell, they are far enough away from the actor playing Hermia that she won't seem completely unbelievable in her slumber, that she doesn't wake up hearing the commotion that they make when they find each other. Another way Shakespeare gives us clues is the way that he chooses informal and formal pronouns. So if a character uses you instead of thou when speaking to another character, they're showing a more formal position in that conversation. If they choose thou, it's more intimate, it's more familiar. Sometimes in the middle of a scene, a character will change whether or not they're using the formal or the informal. Act 1, Scene 2 of Richard III, the Lady Anne and Richard scene. Richard starts out using you, and as he begins to wear Anne down, he starts to change his pronouns to thou, which becomes more intimate, more personal with her, and him using that form of speech actually disarms her. Another clue that Shakespeare gives us in his text is when he has a character change meter in the middle of a scene. Using the same Lady Anne and Richard III scene, Act 1, Scene 2, Lady Anne comes into the scene and sees Richard and speaks in iambic pentameter very clearly, very collected, very poignant, and purposeful with her thoughts and her speech. And as Richard begins to wear her down, she stops using the iambic pentameter and starts responding more briefly in 6-syllable sentences. And by the end of the scene, she is almost left speechless. She actually has a line that is 3 syllables, and it's, what is it? It's really an indicator for the actor that this person has lost all of their faculties. He has successfully won the match.
Classical actors have a number of resources at their disposal to help them understand the meaning and context of Shakespeare's words. The Shakespeare Lexicon by Alexander Schmidt is an invaluable tool for actors. It contains multiple definitions and contexts for every word in the canon. Other actor resources like Shakespeare's Words by David and Ben Crystal include helpful charts defining archaic terms and phrases, historical and mythological names, as well as plot summaries and character relationship diagrams explaining who's who and how they are connected. Shakespeare also uses a number of poetic devices as a way of illuminating character psychology, including antithesis, in which two words or ideas are set up in opposition to one another. To be or not to be. Alliteration, or the repetition of initial sounds in a sequence of words. Murder, murder, most foul. And of course, rhyme. The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
Some actors feel stifled by reading too much about a play or a character. It's that classic, what we call the paralysis of analysis. It's just too much information. But there's a reason why you will find the lexicons on every actor's shelf and in every rehearsal room. There's no way to begin preparing to play any role, whether it's Hamlet or Balthazar number 4, unless you know what you're saying. And so that's why every Shakespearean actor starts with the words.
As you get more experience, you start to know what to look for in the text to see how your character changes. For example, in the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, when the two characters are in love, they use descriptive words of nature to describe how powerful and beautiful and wonderful nature is. For example, during Juliet's Gallop Apace speech, she says about Romeo, "Take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun." Then, by the change of events in the play, when things start to sort of go south on them, they start to feel like nature is working against them instead of for them. Romeo says, "I defy you, stars." They literally start turning their back on nature and start trying to control the course of the play. Repetition of words is extremely popular in Shakespeare's work. In particular, in Hamlet, he uses a word repeated 3 times. So we know Hamlet says words, words, words. One of the more tragic moments in the play, when Gertrude has to announce to Laertes that Ophelia has drowned, she says, "They found Ophelia in the lake." And Laertes says, "Drowned." And Gertrude responds with "drowned, drowned."
Once an actor has connected the words with their meanings, the next step is to put them together into the primary mode of action in Shakespeare's characters, their thoughts.
Shakespeare tends to have particularly long thought arcs. I mean, if you look at a Shakespearean speech, "To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them," is one thought. 2 is to find out the difference between when there's a new thought and when you're having a continuation of an old thought, of the previous thought. So for example, "To be or not to be, that is the question," is a period. That is one sentence. And then Hamlet continues, "Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows," and you realize that that next sentence is a continuation of the idea of to be or not to be. To be or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time? The oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. Who would? Fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death. The undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have, than fly to others we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. And enterprises of great pitch and moment, with this regard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
Once actors have determined the meaning of the words and separated them into thoughts, they can begin to investigate what happens when those thoughts come in contact and conflict with the thoughts of other characters. Two or more characters speaking their thoughts to one another, affecting a change in one or both, is what we commonly call a scene.
So the first step in the analysis is looking at the word, looking at the words. And then we get bigger as we go out. We go from words to thought to speech. Words make up the line, words and lines make up the thought, thoughts make up the speech. And then the next larger piece of that is, what do these little changes tell us, not just about the individual speech, but about an entire scene? So in Hamlet, how do all the words, thoughts, scenes all add up? And you can really track Hamlet's change by a simple two-letter word, be. We all know the famous to be or not to be. And there, it's the ultimate question. It's a question of death and existence, to be or not to be. And it's also a question of action. And then when we get to Act 5, Hamlet says, since no man of aught he leaves knows, what is to leave betimes? And his answer is, let be. So we moved from be as the ultimate question to be as the ultimate answer.
Now that we've reviewed text analysis and how an actor prepares technically for a role, we will start to explore interpretation and how that changes for every actor. We talked to Laura Welshberg, who played Hamlet a few years ago, and Maurice Jones, another actor who played Hamlet, and see the differences and the challenges they faced as they took on this gargantuan role.